Hi, horror fans, what's your favorite scary movie? Today, we're going to review a classic that changed the game, Wes Craven's Scream from 1996. This isn't your typical slasher film. If you're a horror fan, you know this movie flipped the script on the genre and revitalized slasher films for a whole new generation. Director Wes Craven teamed up with writer Kevin Williamson, who brought a fresh voice to the script. Coming off A Nightmare on Elm Street, Craven knew how to blend horror with dark humor. Let's get into it. Scream takes place in the small town of Woodsboro, where a masked killer known as Ghostface begins to pick off high school students one by one. The story is centered around Sydney Prescott, played by Neve Campbell, who's dealing with the recent murder of her mother. The murders spark a media frenzy, with local reporter Gail Weathers, played by Courtney Cox, eager to catch the scoop. As the body count rises, Sydney and her friends try to figure out who's behind the mask before they become the next victims. Now, what really sets Scream apart is its meta-commentary on the horror genre. It's a classic whodunit, but with a modern, self-aware twist. This movie came out during a time when slasher films were on the decline. Audiences had grown tired of the same old formulas: masked killers, screaming teens, predictable deaths. But Scream turned that formula on its head by acknowledging it. The genius of Scream lies in how it plays with horror tropes while still delivering the scares. The characters know they're in a horror movie and they talk about the rules to survive, which is something we hadn't seen done like this before. You've got Randy, played by Jamie Kennedy, literally explaining the rules of horror movies to the characters. Don't have sex, don't say you'll be right back. And then those rules are broken in the film itself. It's self-aware, but not in a way that makes it feel like a parody. It's more of a love letter to the genre while also modernizing it. Scream didn't just breathe new life into the slasher genre, it changed the way horror movies were made. After its release, we saw a wave of more self-aware, teen-oriented horror films like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend. It also paved the way for horror comedies and subversive takes on the genre like The Cabin in the Woods years later. The cast is top-notch for this film. First, we've got Neve Campbell as Sydney Prescott, one of the most iconic final girls in horror history. What makes Sydney unique is her complexity. She's vulnerable, dealing with the trauma of her mother's murder, but she's also tough, resourceful, and not afraid to fight back. Neve Campbell plays Sydney with a mix of strength and fragility that gives her character a depth we don't often see in slasher protagonists. Unlike many horror heroines, Sydney's not just running from the killer, she's grappling with her own internal struggles. Her arc throughout the film is one of reclaiming her agency and survival, and Campbell's performance anchors the entire movie. Courtney Cox shines as Gail Weathers. Gail is smart, ambitious, and unapologetically self-serving at the start, but we see her character evolve. Courtney Cox, who at the time was best known for Friends, plays against type here. She gives Gail this sharp, almost ruthless edge, but she's also capable of compassion, especially in her growing relationship with Dewey. This mix of traits makes Gail unpredictable and fascinating to watch. Speaking of Dewey, David Arquette plays Dewey with just the right amount of awkwardness, but he's not a joke. There's heart to his character. It's a refreshing change in a genre that usually casts law enforcement in a much more rigid, stereotypical way. In a genre where the cop character is usually hardened or unreasonably macho, Dewey stands out because he's almost the opposite. He's sincere, goofy, and has a sweetness to him that makes you instantly root for him. Let's talk about one of the biggest reveals in Scream, the fact that the two killers, Billy and Stu, are in Sydney's group of friends. While the twist itself is shocking, especially in 1996, when multiple killers were rare in horror movies, the rewatch value is incredible because on a second viewing, it becomes almost comical how obvious it is that these two are the killers. Take, for example, the fountain scene. There's so much blatant foreshadowing here that it's hard not to laugh at how overtly suspicious Billy and Stu are acting. Both Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard deliver standout performances. Skeet Ulrich gives Billy this brooding, mysterious aura, and for much of the film, you're kept guessing whether he's just a moody boyfriend or something much more sinister. Ulrich's portrayal of Billy taps into that classic bad boy archetype, but he also brings a cold, calculated side that becomes chilling in the film's final act. He's playing two parts at once, the seemingly concerned boyfriend and the cold-blooded killer. I think Matthew Lillard's performance as Stu Macher is one of the most memorable parts of Scream. Lillard goes all in with Stu, and it works because he's able to blend humor with horror. Stu's over-the-top personality and erratic behavior provide a lot of the film's comic relief, but there's something deeply unsettling about how unhinged he becomes as the plot unravels. He's goofy, sure, but underneath that is a dangerous instability that makes him unpredictable. That famous line, "My mom and dad are gonna be so mad at me," perfectly sums up how Lillard can make you laugh while simultaneously giving you chills. We can't talk about Scream without highlighting the unforgettable opening scene with Drew Barrymore as Casey Becker. What makes this scene even more remarkable is that Barrymore was originally cast to play Sidney Prescott, the lead role that eventually went to Neve Campbell. At the time, Drew Barrymore was one of the biggest stars attached to the film, and it was expected she'd carry the story. Barrymore's face was plastered all over the movie's promotional material and poster. She's front and center, which led audiences to believe she was the film's lead. But Barrymore made a bold move. She requested to play Casey instead, arguing that killing off a star of her stature in the opening minutes would shock the audience and set the tone for the entire film. And I agree. This decision to cast Barrymore as Casey instead of Sidney was a game changer. By placing one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces in the film's opening and then killing her off in such a brutal and shocking way, it told the audience immediately that no one was safe. It flipped the slasher genre on its head by defying expectations right from the start. The cameos also make the film special in my opinion. First up, we've got the Fonz himself, Henry Winkler, who plays Principal Himbry. He's the stern, somewhat paranoid school principal, and while his role isn't huge, it's memorable, especially when Ghostface comes for him. There's even a fun little moment when he looks in the closet in his office. You can see his black leather jacket he wore as Fonzie in his iconic role in Happy Days. His death scene also adds another level of tension to the film, reminding us that no one is safe, not even authority figures. Next, we've got a quick but cool cameo from horror royalty, Linda Blair, who played Regan in The Exorcist. She appears briefly as a pushy news reporter outside the school, harassing Sidney after the murders start making headlines. It's a blink and you'll miss it moment, but for fans of The Exorcist, it's a fun little nod to one of the most iconic horror films of all time. And then there's the cameo that really stands out, Wes Craven himself, dressed as none other than Freddy Krueger. In one of the film's lighter moments, we see Craven playing a school janitor named Fred, decked out in a red and green striped sweater and hat, just like Freddy. It's a playful homage to Craven's earlier work with A Nightmare on Elm Street. And let's not forget the legacy of Ghostface. The simple, haunting mask inspired by Edvard Munch's painting The Scream is instantly recognizable, and it's become an iconic symbol in horror. Ghostface isn't like Jason or Michael Myers, who are almost supernatural in their strength and immortality. Ghostface is clumsy, human, and often makes mistakes, which somehow makes him even scarier because he feels more real. The movie's influence on the horror genre can't be overstated. After Scream, we saw a resurgence of the slasher film and a wave of more self-aware meta-horror that embraced the rules while simultaneously breaking them. Ghostface became an icon, and the legacy of the film still lives on with its sequels and the modern horror movies it inspired. But what truly makes Scream timeless is its ability to balance fear and fun, subverting the audience's expectations at every turn. So, what did you think of Scream? Does it still hold up after all these years? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, if you enjoyed this review, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more horror content, and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay safe and stay spooky.